Hello and welcome to this course on Timeleaf. My name is Matt Greencroft and I'm going to be your instructor on this course. In this short introduction, I'm going to explain what Timeleaf is and then we'll set up a project ready to start building the Timeleaf pages. So what is Timeleaf? Well, it's a server-side templating engine. What this means is that if you're building an MVC or Model View Controller application, then you can use Thymeleaf as a way to build your views. Right now, Thymeleaf is fully compatible with Spring, and that's both traditional Spring MVC applications and Spring Boot, and in due course, we expect it to become compatible with Java EE. According to the people behind Thymeleaf, they're saying that they're waiting for the MVC API to become a standard within Java EE, and that's expected to happen in Java EE 8. But for now, we'll be concentrating on Spring. As we progress through the course, we're going to use Spring Boot as the underlying system to build our Timeleaf pages on. That will be a good way for us to learn about Timeleaf, but then at the end of the course, we'll learn how to use Timeleaf in a non-Spring Boot Spring MVC application. And in fact, there'll be a worked exercise to do at that point as well. Now, if you've built Spring-based MVC applications, then you'll almost certainly have worked with Java Server Pages, or JSP. That has been the default way to build views with Spring and other Java frameworks, and indeed, we've used JSP on a number of other courses here at Virtual Pair Programmers. Well, Timeleaf is a newer alternative to JSP, and it provides a number of benefits, but there's one in particular that I think is really important. I've got on screen here a relatively straightforward JSP page. If you've done any JSP, then you'll be very familiar with this. What we can see is that we've got some tag libraries referenced at the top here. Those are from the JSTL framework, the Java standard tag library, and that allows us to use tags like this for each tag down here, or there's the format date option over here. Now, Timeleaf works a little bit differently to this. It uses standard HTML only. There are none of these custom tags in Timeleaf. We achieve the same functionality, but in a different way. And because Timeleaf is built using standard HTML only, well, you can open a Timeleaf page in a web browser and see something sensible. Let me show you what I mean. If I try and open this file, this JSP file in a web browser, well, this is what it looks like. It's not particularly pretty. We can see the tag libs just render as though they were HTML. We've got our dollars and then the name of the field here being printed out. It hasn't picked up the CSS style sheet. It doesn't look very nice. This is the equivalent to that file, but created in Timeleaf. As you can see, the tag libs have gone. We don't have that C for each tag down here. I'm going to explain all of these different things that is the Timeleaf code as we progress through the course. But the important thing is that if I open this HTML file in a web browser, well, I get something much more meaningful. We've got some placeholder information being displayed here so we can see what it would look like, and the style sheet has been picked up, which has formatted our headings and our tables. So when you open a Timeleaf file in a web browser outside of your application, you get a good representation of what the page will look like. We get that representation by displaying dummy data which has been embedded into the Timeleaf file. At runtime, our application is going to replace these dates, amounts, and the value of any reference with the data that's been supplied to it from our controller. So why is this important? Why is it useful to have this good representation of the file if we just open it in a browser? Well, the reason is that it makes development of your web applications a lot easier, especially if you're working with a web designer. Your workflow might be that a web designer presents you with a set of HTML and CSS files, and your job is to integrate these into your application. This is reasonably straightforward to do, as you'll simply be adding in extra attributes to the HTML that your web designer has already written. You're not going to be converting the HTML into JSTL style tags. You're not going to be adding in any extra tags. All you're actually going to do is add some extra attributes. If this isn't completely clear, if you're not that familiar with HTML, don't worry, because as we progress through the course, it will become really clear what this means. Alternatively, it may be that you're building your web application first, and then you'll need to get a web designer to take what you've done and make it look nice or more user-friendly. Well, again, Timeleaf works well in this example because the web designer can take what you've already done, they can open it in their favourite web editor and view it in their web browser and make the changes they want to see without breaking your code. That would be completely impossible using JSP. We'll see some of this in practice as we progress through the course, and in fact at the very end there will be an exercise where we'll take some HTML as supplied by a web designer and we'll be adding the Thymeleaf attributes to make it work within our application. So now that we have an understanding of what Thymeleaf is, I'd like to show you how to get it installed. We'll do that in this chapter, and then we can start building our web pages using Thymeleaf in the next chapter. So whether you're working with a traditional Spring MVC application or Spring Boot, all you need to do is include the Thymeleaf dependencies in your Maven pom.xml file. We'll look at how to get the dependencies into a traditional Spring MVC application later in the course. I've got an example of one of these, and we're going to actually use it to convert from JSP into Thymeleaf. We'll do that as an exercise at the end of the course. I want to leave it for now because getting Thymeleaf to work with Spring MVC does need a little bit of configuration, whereas with Spring Boot, it's really simple. All we need to do is to get one dependency into our application. I think rather than show you what this is, we might as well create a new Spring Boot project with Thymeleaf using the Spring Initializer web page. So I'm sure, at least if you've done Virtual Programmer's Spring Boot course, you know exactly what you're doing here. I'm at start.spring.io, and well, let's go and create the project. We'll call the group com.virtualpairprogrammers. I think the name of the artifact should be probably something like Learning Timeleaf. During the first part of this course, we're not going to be building a full application. We're just going to be creating a few pages to learn how to use Thymeleaf. So I've called it that for now. At the very end of the course, we'll use some larger projects to understand how to integrate Thymeleaf and use it with some more production-style examples. So what dependencies do we need? Well, we obviously are going to need web because we're building a Spring MVC application here. I'm going to pick DevTools as well. That will mean that our application will automatically restart every time we make a change, so that will be helpful. And, well, we're going to need Timeleaf. That's a dependency here, so let's just type this in. There's Timeleaf. And that's all we need for this first project where we're going to be learning about Thymeleaf. Now, obviously in a production project, you'll be picking other dependencies such as JPA, the database that you're going to be using, and so on. We're not going to use any of that in this project because we're just concentrating on the views. So I think we can finish there and generate the project. Okay, so we'll unzip the file that's been downloaded here. So here's my workspace. I've unzipped the project here. So let's load it into Eclipse and then we'll run the pom.xml to get the Maven dependencies. So I'm sure you've done this many times before. In Eclipse, we'll do File, New Java Project. We'll type in the project name, which was Learning Timeleaf. And we've got a little note to say it's found the project source, so that's great. We'll click on Finish here. Now, as expected, because this is a Maven project, there'll be some errors, there'll be some dependencies it hasn't yet got. We'll get those in a moment, but first, let's just have a quick look at the pom.xml file. Okay, so in the pom.xml file, if we look at the dependencies, we'll see there's just a single dependency here for Thymeleaf, which is the Spring Boot Starter Thymeleaf dependency. So if you've got an existing Spring Boot project, then all you need to do to add Thymeleaf in is add in this single dependency, rerun your POM, and you'll be ready to start building some Thymeleaf code. Now, before we run this, there is a further change we do need to make to the POM. If you've done our Spring Boot course, or if you've built any Spring Boot projects yourself, I'm sure you'll have done this, and that is that you need to make an amendment to the POM to tell Eclipse that when it does the build, it needs to include application.properties. And in fact, what we'll do is say include anything in the resources folder in the build. By default, some files will be excluded from this folder. We want to tell Maven that the build path should not filter out this folder. So to do that, we'll scroll down to the build section, and after plugins, we're going to add in a new section here, which is a tag called resources. Within the resources tag, we're going to have another tag called resource. And then we just need two tags in here. The first one is going to be called filtering. And we're going to set that to false. We're not going to filter the following directory. And so we want the directory tag. And then we'll put in here src/main/resources. So that should mean that application.properties, which is in the resources folder, will get picked up now, along with anything else we put in resources or any subfolders of resources. And as we'll see very soon, that's going to become quite important. So let's save that, and we'll finish this chapter by running the Maven build. So we'll right click on the pom.xml, choose run as Maven build. We'll give it a goal of Eclipse, and run that. And we don't have many dependencies, so I imagine that's going to be quite quick to run. And yes, we've got a build success message here. That looks good. Let's just refresh the project and check that all of our problems go away. And they do. It looks like there's no red crosses left. So we're now in a position to start. When you join me in the next chapter, then we'll start to build our first web pages with Thymeleaf. I'll see you there.